I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
Channeling Oliver Cromwell and those who've come since. Let us get to Bloomberg's Lizzy Burden for more. Lizzy, good morning to you. So yesterday, Boris Johnson kept repeating that MPs should wait for the report by senior civil servant Sue Gray on the Downing Street parties. Meanwhile, more and more comes out, really. We already know a lot about what he did or didn't attend and what he did or didn't know, and we certainly have heard his account. So will he survive until we get that report from Sue Gray? Do we know exactly when it comes?
We don't, and he seems to be clinging on until the report comes, but it may not tell us anything that we don't already know. Yesterday, his authority was undermined at Prime Minister's questions. The session was bookended at the start by the defection of a Conservative MP to Labour, and at the end by that denunciation by David Davis that we saw in that clip, telling the Prime Minister, in the name of God, go. Now, the question is whether more MPs are going to decide that the man who won them their seats would lose them their seats at the next election, because lots of Tory MPs are saying that actually the defection has reunited the party around a traitor who helped against a traitor who helped the opposition. So for now, Johnson fights another day, but the danger hasn't passed.
Lizzy, good morning. If the situation deteriorates further for Boris Johnson, whether it's dependent on the Sue Gray report or whether it's any more revelations from Dominic Cummings, what would be the process for the Conservative Party to replace him?
Well, it doesn't seem like Johnson's going to resign, so the other option is for 54 Conservative MPs to write to the chairman of the secretive 1922 committee of Tory backbenchers and call for him to resign. And if and when that magic number of 54 is reached, then Johnson would face a vote of no confidence among his own MPs. That would be done in secret, and if a majority supported him, he'd stay leader. Remember, that's what happened to Theresa May before she voluntarily resigned. But if he lost, and this is where that class of 2019 becomes dangerous, he'd be expected to resign as Tory leader and only stay on as Prime Minister until a successor was found. At the moment, the front-runners are the Chancellor Rishi Sunak and the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, but Conservative MPs will be asking themselves whether either of them has that electoral magic to woo voters in the areas that it seemed only just over 2 years ago Johnson could.
Right, yes, indeed. So, but before we get there, I suppose, if we think about whether it is likely that Boris Johnson does go as a result of this, you know, if Partygate does come and go, will it then be plain sailing for him? I mean, there are other challenges he faces.
There definitely are other challenges, and we've got a big take about this on the terminal today. The cost of living crisis is the other big problem on the horizon for Boris Johnson. Yesterday, we had that CPI print for December, inflation reaching a 30-year high in the UK. And in this big take, my colleagues Phil Aldrich and David Goodman speak to ordinary Britons who are struggling to make it day to day and absolutely dreading April, when energy bills are going to rise and the government's withdrawing fiscal stimulus faster than any of its peers. So the point is, even if voters aren't turned off by Partygate, if they can't afford to heat their homes, that might change their minds on Boris Johnson.
Yeah, a lot of focus on whether the government will introduce any kind of policy to cushion maybe the worst affected or more broadly the population from that change in April. But Lizzy, thank you very much. A really interesting big take. NI Big Take is the function to use on your Bloomberg if you want to get more on that cost of living squeeze in the UK. Lizzy Burden there with the UK politics and economics roundup for us.